So I just want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. We want to let you know that we'll be recording today's session. We'll be sharing that with you within 24 hours after today's live event. What we will be doing is taking a look at who D'Absolute is. We'll do an introduction to the webinar and the purpose of our discussion today. We'll hear from our panelists, going around on the roundtable discussion questions, and then we'll open it up to a Q&A session. If you do have any questions, we do encourage you to input those in the Q&A or ask a question widget at the bottom. And if we do have time and they're relevant to the discussion question, we'll try and answer them as we're going along. If not, we'll tackle those questions at the end of our webinar. I'd like to pass this on to Matt McCallum, our VP of Sales, who's also our moderator for today's event.
Thanks, Erica. Appreciate it. And first off, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join. We're here to discuss PSA as part of a 4-part series we're committed to in partnership with Certinia. Today's topic is really a drill down on analytics, the value that brings to a business, individual constituents, decision makers between a business. We'll get the panel introduced here in a moment, but I'm going to start out with just a quick slide on our journey as D'Absolute. If you're not familiar with us, we've grown both organically and through M&A over the years. Certinia, formerly known as Financial Force, became a big focus for us back in 2014. And we've been on the journey with Certinia, Financial Force at this point, in really wrapping ourselves around the customer. And an interesting parallel, part of the major target and mission for Certinia is managing the people part of the business, and specific to SIs, services delivery organizations, which is what we are. That's the perspective we bring. That's where we're coming from. And we are also a summit partner, and very grateful to be awarded by Certinia Financial Force last year the Delivery Excellence Award. So looking forward to the conversation today. If we want to move forward, we'll get the panel introduced. So as Erica said, I'm the VP of Sales with D'Absolute. I've been here for pushing up against 4 years. It's been an incredible ecosystem journey for me. I've been a long time channel sales guy, and I believe strongly in partnerships and the benefit that brings, working in collaboration, focused on positive customer outcomes. Rachel Chand, who is also a longtime channel professional, service delivery expert. Rachel, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So as Matt mentioned, we became a Certinia partner in 2014. I joined not long after that in 2015, and I'm one of the services leaders here. I head up the D'Absolute Revenue Cloud and Certinia team, and got a background in service delivery, project management, IT management as well. But one of my biggest passions is helping businesses achieve their digital transformations. And I think analytics is a huge part of that. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Rachel. And then really happy to have Joe Thomas. I call Joe the guru of all things analytics, very focused on customer outcomes and organization of data and what data can create in terms of wins for a company. So Joe, go ahead, introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Joe Thomas. I am the Global Analytics Evangelist at Certinia. I've been at Certinia for 7 weeks, but so is everyone else, because that's how old the name change is. Before that, obviously, I joined Financial Force in 2017. My job was to figure out what we were going to do around analytics. We had already, even in 2017, hit a lot of the limitations with our PS Cloud around what transactional Salesforce reporting could do. The 3-object limit, the 2,000 row output limit, things that many of you here in our audience have probably already hit yourself. we were able to settle pretty quickly on what was then known as the Einstein technology. Took us about a year to productize, and we've been adding new content every release since. But I think we'll get into more details on that later.
Thanks, Joe. And then Jim Bagel, who's putting his time in here. He was our executive sponsor and partner for a project we collaboratively ran at Quest Software, implementing, rolling out PSA analytics, a big part of that. Jim, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Bagel, formerly with Quest. I'm actually retired now. I had about 15 years of consulting in my background, and then maybe the last 20 or so in software company leadership in the role of leading business applications team, and was fortunate enough to end my career at Quest, which was just a wonderful company to be with about a year ago, I'd say. So, and as Matt mentioned, we partnered with both Financial Force / Certinia and D'Absolute in the implementation of our PSA solution at Quest.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and so just for context for the folks that are attending as well, clearly we're a Certinia partner, but as I said before, the interesting parallel with, you know, SIs, people in people business and service delivery, we run our business on Certinia technology. We run our business on PSA, and we leverage analytics heavily. And that's what the discussion is going to be all about today. And we will be in a continuous improvement motion as well as we move through our journey on the platform. But it's brought us already to a place where we've seen significant ROI, significant traction based on that investment. So that's the voice of the customer from my perspective. But the most important customer on the phone today is really Jim and his experience with us at Quest. So, you know, just for a foundational level setting, Jim, I'd like to open it up by kind of asking you, you know, the environment at Quest, what was it like from a business perspective prior to implementing PSA?
Yeah, prior to implementing PSA, well, first of all, Quest was a very complex business, 5 independent business units or semi-independent business units that each operate globally with different software solutions that they sell, with very different sales cycles on each of them, and each of them have a global PSO team. So there were many complexities around that. As we had acquired Dell Software back in 2016, we came out of that with a number of systems that were cobbled together, some manual processes, and systems were non-integrated, didn't speak to each other. There was double keying that had to happen to get processes accomplished, and things depended on a lot of just manpower to make sure that the time was billed, that all the invoices were paid, that we're communicating with partners. So it was a very difficult semi-manual process. And one of our biggest issues coming into that is we were losing revenue due to the information that we didn't have, that we didn't have all of our data in one place, and lack of good communication internally. And when customers would come to us with questions, we didn't have the backup many times to say, yes, we've actually done this work, or yes, we can bill it. So there was an estimate we were losing between 5 to 10% of our revenue just because we didn't have that basic information. At an executive level, there was a lack of ability to forecast or look at our profitability, once again, because of that lack of information. And at the core of it, each BU kind of had their own processes and their own culture that made things a little more difficult to put the entire picture together. So it was a difficult business to run. So our initial focus was really on, let's bring the whole of these teams together and build a common language, build common processes across those different teams so we can effectively manage the business. And then once we get that done, then move into improving our information through analytics.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And it almost feels like, and we've heard the term before a little bit, right? A bit of data anarchy, perhaps, going on within the organization. And we've got Joe here. Joe, you're speaking to customers all the time in terms of that problem. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely have thoughts. I mean, I think data anarchy tends to be the sort of current state for most companies, right? And particularly around service delivery and service organizations. At least on the finance side, you have generally accepted accounting practices. And the beauty of those are they're generally accepted, right? I know Jim, when we were talking earlier, was laughing about things like, if management wants to see EBITDA, there's one common definition for it. But there's no common definition for something like what's a red account. If you ask service delivery, hey, we're behind on our milestones. If you ask support, the system's down. If you ask marketing, they won't do a reference. And if you ask finance, everything can be perfect. But if they're not paying, then it's a red account, right? And so when you've just got, that's a simple example, right? But you probably got 4 different definitions in 7 different spreadsheets with 6 different sets of numbers, or more likely 9 or 10 different sets of numbers. And that's kind of the way that we see most organizations. And why? It's just some of those things that Jim talked about. If you've got different business units, they're going to define things differently, particularly if they've been assembled through acquisition. If you've got no single source of truth or a single customer record, just how Quest software, right? Quest Software, Quest Software Limited, capital Q's and capital S's. You see it as simple as just the alphabet, right? And people struggle with that. So I think data anarchy is the sort of natural state, and all of us need to do what we can to fight it. Because every time you've got 2 different people with 2 different sets of numbers, that's a manual process to reconcile, whether it's us getting on the phone, email, I'm sure that most of us, or at least the customers online here, have the Monday morning sales to service handoff meeting when you're talking about projects over the week. And it's just the disagreements as to who did what, finger pointing, those sorts of pieces. All that's burning time and effort and resources that could be oriented towards successful customer delivery and ultimately customer satisfaction. And so we at Certinia have tried to deliver, wait for it, certainty around these sorts of things, right? It is right there in the name. It is a very conscious choice. And our analytics are the sort of the view screen, the windshield to delivering that type of certainty around all elements of customer delivery.
Yeah, and we're seeing that, Joe. I mean, from a technology and a platform perspective, that's why I mentioned earlier, we're leveraging that capability internally. But it's a lot of change we're talking about. A lot of that involves people as well. And gets me thinking about, like, Rachel, when we try to engage and we're talking to customers about aligning those disparate teams and the processes on best practices, what are your thoughts on how that comes together? Because we know we have the tech, but what do we do to help customers drive towards that end state, end game?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I was kind of chuckling just hearing Jim's experience and then how Joe put it around just, trying to get common definitions, say, around red account, and everybody having their own, let's say, source of data, their own definition and their own process on that, especially across different business units. I think, it's a big pain point. And then, I think about executives trying to get a lay of the land and really understand how is the business performing and how can we grow this business. And it's really difficult to do that without that, I'd say, a data foundation. And I think one of the great things about, a Certinia PSA implementation, it's not the silver bullet, but it's going to come with embedded best practices that are really going to help those business units align about around best practices that are really baked into the product, right? And so, when we think about how to implement from a services standpoint, that's really how we can get a bunch of, different business leaders that all have very strong opinions about how to run their organization and how to define these things. That's how we can get them aligned and really marching in the same direction, is to say, here's a best practice and here's how it's supported in the tool. And let's agree and align on this. This is how other companies are implementing to really get ahead of their competition as well. And that's a great message for leaders to get behind and, to really get a PSA implementation in place. The other thing I was thinking about is, we face this ourselves. As Matt said, we use PSA in-house. Well, we also had a custom homegrown, application that we replaced with Certinia PSA. And this really helped us internally to help define things as simple as a red account, so that now we may have different business units with different areas of focus, but we're all in the same tool, and management can get a clear picture. They can understand where our revenue is headed, the revenue forecasting. They can get a good view for our utilization and other important metrics to really understand the health of the business.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, and I want to remind our attendees, there's a Q&A available at the bottom of the screen there. If anybody has comments, questions, please feel free, and we'll also have that opportunity towards the end of the call. But so we've talked about the fire and the brimstone, right, out of the gate here. Jim, I'm going to go back to you. I'd love your thoughts on how did you see things change at Quest post-implementation and through leveraging Certinia PSA?
Yeah, I think the big thing really through the implementation, working through all of the operational issues, what happened and with the Absolute's help, is that the businesses started to come together, just as we've been talking about. The definitions start to fall in place, as agreement on how we're going to do business. And that's when you have all those things, your operational processes in place and agreement on those sort of things, that's when you have the platform or a baseline to say, okay, now, instead of just having data that we can all see, now we're ready to start building information, information being very different than just having data. So each global practice was, and you were more closely aligned, that common language in place. And after that, then we started getting to the point of good information. And I will say it was not easy in the transition from a semi-manual system to an automated system, to not depending on legions of people to do the work, to cobble things together, but to do it themselves. So there was a bit of change that had to sink in, let's say, before people really got to the point of, okay, I understand what's going on, and now we can start looking at building our information, and got to the capabilities of seeing the employees' availability and skill sets and other information that we had locked away in various spreadsheets and systems. It was all available to us, and then we started to evolve. And I'm a strong believer in system implementations and then information coming out of them. It takes an entire organization to evolve and then learn together, consistent with what we've been saying up to this point. And it really becomes simple after those processes are in place and the people are aligned. But as with any major system implementation, it's very, very heavily dependent on the people and getting that alignment of the individuals.
Totally appreciate that, Jim. And I think you're absolutely correct. And, it's in the implementation cycle, it's a people business, and ultimately the outcome is, how do we best set our people up for success? And, the data behind that to do that, we understand that on a daily basis. I think Rachel and I talk about it every day. So our approach, Rachel, how did we figure out how to best help Quest pull that value realization forward and get to an ROI as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the investment and the amount of change that is required to really transform an organization, I think, realizing value quickly is a theme that we hear a lot from our business leaders looking to make those changes. And I think, one thing that we really preach and that works well with organizations, and I think worked well with Quest, is to use a crawl, walk, run approach and really focus on getting that foundation in place to start to be able to unlock, data that had been, as Jim said, locked away in spreadsheets on, people's computers, to start to unlock and get access to good information in a line around common definitions and understanding about how the way we're now going to run a business. And, a lot of the times you land with PSA and then you start to expand out and make more use of analytics over time. A lot of the times in a project, what we'll do is we use a hybrid methodology. And upfront, we're going to work on a blueprint or a design for that, the business. And what we want to do is start first with understanding how Jim and how others want to measure the business and really understand what are they looking to get access to and how can we help them to unlock that. And we come up with this blueprint design with that end goal in mind. If we shifted to more of an iterative type implementation, it'd be really difficult to rally around that and to make sure that that's what ends up happening by the time we're live with the system. But, once we get out of that blueprint design, we really focus on those incremental changes. So as we're building out the system and we're working with the business, I think what starts to happen is you get a lot of subject matter experts who now understand more about how PSA works and more about, how they're going to be able to get access to the data, and new requirements will start to evolve or happen over time. It's very natural, right? And so, I don't think I've ever been part of an implementation where, what you put in that blueprint design, a year later is just a locked in set of requirements. It really becomes a foundation for how the business can now begin to grow and expand. And I think once the dust settles and PSA is implemented and, people start playing around with analytics and really understanding how powerful it is, that's where you start to see another set of enhancements roll out. And, it just creates this, I would say it overcomes this inertia of change and really gets the business to a point where it can evolve and grow with this new system in place.
Fantastic. So we've talked a fair bit about, the problem, the journey, the how, but let's talk a little bit, we're using the term analytics. Let's break it down a little bit. And I'd go to Joe, for a little bit of a breakdown. We've got different packaging, parceling of, product. But for companies like Quest, if we're talking about advanced analytics, how are we helping Quest or other customers make better, smarter business decisions?
Well, how long you got, Matt? Because I can go all day on this, right? I'm pretty proud of what we've done. As I said, we first productized in 2018. And what do I mean by productizing advanced analytics? We took what Salesforce sells. Well, then it was called the Einstein Analytics piece. It's had about 7 names since 2017. It's currently known as CRM Analytics. We OEM it, and we've gone and built a package of what we call advanced analytics for services. We've gone and built a data model. We have built a workflow to populate that data model from the transactional tables. We have built in Salesforce talk lenses, or sort of business view slices of information around difficult things to calculate, like deferred revenue or utilization, billings, backlog, your services forecast. We've gotten distinct slices of those. We've gone and built KPIs and metrics, and then we've built a set of pre-built dashboards. All of this gets the data out of the old, slow, clunky Oracle database that underpins most of Salesforce. And I get to make fun of it because I spent 25 years at Oracle. I know exactly what it can and can't do. It's a great database for storing data. It's a suboptimal database for near real-time analysis. Salesforce gets around that and puts data into an in-memory column in your data store. You're not pre-calculating anything. You're really just applying math and horsepower. And we've gone and taken that core technology and have built out what we think are all over 1,000 PSA customers have told us they want. So we've gone and built dashboards for billings. We've built dashboards for backlog. We've built several dashboards for utilization. And any one of these dashboards represents dozens or hundreds of possible reports. We're going to support your region practice group hierarchy. I can look at utilization for my entire business, and I can look at utilization for 2 people in Topeka, Kansas, all on the same dashboard. Of course, assuming the person that's viewing has the right permissions. I've seen a range of decisions around permissions. Some companies let everyone see everything. Would not be my recommendation, but it's out there as an option. Most companies apply some semblance of security. So if I'm the head of the Western region, I'm able to drill down to transactional level of data in the West, and maybe I can see high level for the Central and the Eastern United States. If I'm the practice lead for France, I can see France at a detailed level, but maybe I can't see Germany. All this is customizable and configurable. And even at that utilization definition, again, let's look at our good friend at the practice leader in France. France has a 35-hour work week. Utilization calculations for your French service delivery people is going to be different than for your people in the United States, where standard I've seen is a 44-hour for a billable type piece. Obviously, being able to change and alter those things, it's not one size fits all. It's delivering that sort of sense of certainty. All of this is coming directly from the transactional data itself. No massaging of data like we see in spreadsheets. I mean, how many times have you talked to someone about a spreadsheet and you've seen, hey, where's, the Acme project? I know that's kind of off the rails. Well, I didn't want to include that in my analysis because it's an outlier. Yeah, it's an outlier. It's going off the tracks. And, there's a rule, I think no one ever looks bad in their own spreadsheet. There's a lot of what I like to call uncomfortable truths inside businesses. Like 3 of your top 5 projects by revenue aren't profitable to you. And what do you mean? We built $3 million on that project. Yeah, but you're probably spending $4 million worth of time on it. How much of that utilization is billable? How much of it is consuming executive time? Any of those sorts of pieces. We very much try to get around that, right? The data doesn't lie. And being able to take the data directly from the transactional pieces, orient it with certainty to a single customer record, a single project, a single milestone within those projects in an automated fashion is going to help deliver that certainty. And that's really what we're trying to do. We also want to give people that information at the moment of impact. Hey, I know something's wrong. Let me get out of my 9 systems. Let me go to a separate BI tool. Let me start digging around. What was I looking for again? Right. You've already broken your train of thought around these pieces. Most of these analytics that we've built to be embedded in what we call workspaces. They're basically user-based, persona-based user interfaces. So we have them for your resource manager, the person that's assigning people. They're going to see a lot around utilization and probably profitability around pieces, margin. We're going to have people for practice, a user interface for your practice managers, for your project leads, and even for your individual contributors. So giving people the information they need to make decisions at the moment of impact is really what we're trying to do. I know that was a long-winded way of getting at it, but the real impact we've seen for people, and you'll laugh when I say it, it's 2 and 3% improvements. And 2 and 3%, that doesn't sound like a lot, Joe. Well, if I can improve margin 2 or 3% on $100 million consulting business, that's real money. Right? And that's money that's being leaked out right now from your business. That's money you've earned and you're just not collecting. And that's affecting things like utilization, like margin, top and bottom line issues. So there's pieces that we've seen there. I know, Matt, you've used it yourself within your business. We don't build it because it's fun or nice to have. It is fun to build. But to me, what's fun is when I'm actually affecting business change, right? When I am changing behaviors. And sometimes it's as simple as people seeing what they're doing. And hey, you need to log that as a time in your time card, right? You help that customer for 2 hours. Some of that might be free, some of that should be billable. And a lot of times it's as simple as just that change management can be as simple as just seeing the impact. Another big change that we see, and I think we'll talk a little about this when we talk about the difference in some of the licensing, is people want to know how they're being measured and how they're being measured above them. And the best way I can see for user adoption, at least down low, is to tell people you're being tracked like this, in these analytics. I can guarantee you that if my boss tells me, here's how I'm tracking you, I'm going to want to see that data. Right? I'm going to want to understand what actions I'm taking. So that's always adoption, I think, is always one of the struggles on this. I'm a big fan of tying effort to compensation. I like to say I'm incentive based, and those sorts of pieces. I think most humans are. They want to do well. They want to do the right thing. They want to know that what they're doing is impacting their work. And analytics, I think, is the best way to show people that.
Well, what you just said resonates so much for me personally in my role. I mean, you've still got this finger pointing exercise between sales, between delivery in a service organization where it's like, hey, you undersold this. Well, no, I didn't. This was imputed up front from a margin perspective, and you underdelivered or you over-resourced or all those discussions. And the problem is we're not looking at the same data
right
a lot of the time, right? Or we don't even have visibility to it at all. And I don't know, Jim, I think it goes back to earlier in the discussion, what you were explaining. I think it kind of like ties a bow around it a bit. Do you have any comments or any thoughts based on what Joe said?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with where Joe is at. The big thing, of course, is getting all that data, making it available to everybody, and then just the human factors coming together and saying, this is how we're going to run the business. This is how we're going to measure things. The best company I ever worked with, the executive team would get together twice a year to go over our key business indicators and made sure that we all agreed, are these measures still valid? Are they relevant to our business? So I think businesses take a journey, like I was saying, get to a platform where things are implemented, we can start building our information, and then you start to evolve from there. You ask deeper questions about things because you realize, hey, we can get this now, and you're asking questions that you didn't think you could ever get an answer to. And then to the total evolvement, it's just constant improvement and asking us, yeah, we've got this information, but is it really the measure of our business? Do we still all agree on this, or is it chaff? And we need to do away with that. So, yeah, Joe stepped on some topics that I wish I had talked with him back when I was on the working side.
Very good. Well, Joe, I think to your point, you mentioned, and I know, so the licensing piece of it, I know for a fact coming into the webinar, we've got some attendees that wanted to really understand, when I buy PSA upfront, what am I getting from an analytics perspective? And then what is really the advanced piece look like? So I know this gets a bit granular, but we're addressing a specific ask here. So if you could kind of step us through
Sure.
this.
Happy to do it. And I'll tell you when you license PSA, what else are you going to get? You're going to get a huge package of pre-built transactional reports. What do you not see on here? I'm going to give you a Salesforce report that tells you which projects don't have time cards on it. Right. So don't just think what you're seeing. This is not just what you see. Here's what you get. Certainly what we should probably push out to this audience is the very creative definitive guide to Certinia reporting, which it'll list everything that we give you. But here I just picked some highlights between what we call PS Cloud Core Analytics, which is a free offering. Any user, any PSA user has the rights to it. It is a subset of our paid analytics. It is oriented towards individual contributors. So it's show me what my individual utilization is. Show me what my revenue forecast is. Show me, in this case, it's project burnup, but without the time series prediction, I like to call it sort of financial status. Where am I in terms of milestones? Where am I in terms of hours billed? And for those of you that have licensed our services CPQ product, our product to do and build service estimates, those dashboards are part of that core offering as well. There's some constraints to it. You're only going to be able to update once a day instead of sub-daily. What you see is what you get. It comes to you free. You don't even need the Analytics Studio, but that means a lot of this is pretty hard-coded. Now, we've done a good job of making sure that there's the right filters and those sorts of pieces on there, but you can't add new filters. You can't add custom objects or custom dashboards. That's free. And again, a subset of what we call our advanced analytics. That is a paid add-on, or it is bundled with a lot of our PSA offerings. But I kind of rattled off some of those things around, right? The common things: utilization, billings, backlog. A lot of that's in the PSA overview. Capacity and demand dashboards. I think I've heard customers call that the magic screen, where I'm looking at the businesses coming in. I'm looking at what I've already authorized in terms of from a resource management standpoint, and then seeing what's the impact. I can tell you we're a big user of this dashboard, because as much as we try to smooth out services demand, we sell a lot of deals in the last week of a quarter. We sell a lot of business the last 2 days of a fiscal year. And if we didn't have visibility to that, and we're planning for, hey, I'm going to sell a couple 7-figure deals here, January 29th, 30th, 31st, those customers want to start those projects. They don't want to be told, oh yeah, we can get to those in April and May. They want to start them in February. So being able to see that sort of capacity and demand, you're going to see we released the first version of a scheduling risk dashboard. You're going to see enhancements to that in our summer release. And I would not be surprised if you saw some other pieces, net new pieces come out from us around things like cash flow forecasting, margin optimization, delivery optimization, kind of helping you smooth those bumps out. Look for more announcements as part of our summer release, and look for some, I think, very exciting announcements hand in hand with the Salesforce at Dreamforce this year in September. I know that analytics, AI is going to be a big push for Salesforce at Dreamforce, and we're going to be right there with them with some pretty interesting things that we're doing around those pieces as well.
So that's a pretty good teaser, Joe. And for what it's worth, for anybody out there planning on attending Dreamforce, we will be kind of home base for Certinia, and we lean in heavily at that event. We'll be at Fogo de Chao, which is in very close proximity to the Moscone Center.
Right across the street.
Yeah, we will be there, and we would welcome the opportunity to, deeper dive, one-on-one, any kind of that ask from anyone in the audience. We're there and available. Here's what you got me thinking about, Joe. So here's the breakdown around, the core analytics piece and advanced from a licensing perspective. Rachel, when we talk to customers, can you talk a little bit about like who needs what and how we guide the customer down that path? Is there a methodology we have to kind of determine what customer best fits into the advanced piece of the pie here?
Yeah, well, a lot of, as Joe mentioned, the core analytics product is free, and anyone that has PSA in place can start to make use of that. And, I think Jim and I touched on this, but, once people start to understand the possibilities and what you can do with PSA and with core analytics, people start to think about other ways to visualize data. And, if you're interested in, say, coming up with your own custom dashboard, as you can see here on the screen that Joe's got open here, Advanced Analytics brings that capability. So you can either create your own dashboard with your own metrics as you evolve over time, or you can also just, modify one of the existing dashboards, save it, make some changes to it. And, a place that I think a lot of customers enjoy that Joe touched on is the capacity dashboard. And that's really cool. But it takes good data in the system, right? So, in a PSA implementation, don't sleep on tracking your skills and your certifications for your consultants. You want good data in there as part of that implementation or shortly after you've rolled out. Beautiful thing about it is you can really make that self-service. You can have consultants logging their own skills, their own certs as they earn them, have a review or approval process in place so you don't have anybody going too crazy with that. And then you can start to visualize that in that capacity dashboard and see, what skills are in demand in our pipeline.
Right.
Maybe there's a skill that's really hot right now in delivery we're doing quite a bit of, but you look ahead at the pipeline and you see, well, there's something new on the horizon here that, we're going to need to be prepared for. And how many people do we have with that skill set who will be available, say, by the time that opportunity or those sets of opportunities are close won? You can start to answer those business questions, and, customers, when they start to see that, they really think, okay, I want to start tailoring this, and Advanced Analytics is really the place that can bring you that capability.
Yeah, I love that you brought that out, Rachel. I mean, I have a simple rule of thumb, right? Core is really targeted to individual contributors. Advanced is really targeted to, I think the first group you should look at is your services ops people, because they're the ones that tend to get asked these questions around margin, around capacity, around demand. And then anyone whose last name is manager, leader, practice manager, project manager, anyone that has a portfolio of X, a portfolio of projects, a portfolio of people, portfolio of practices, that's really where the advanced analytics is going to shine. And to your point, we're giving you a foundation. It's tougher in services, right? Every services business is slightly unique. It's not like financials, right? Where, again, the generally accepted accounting practices. And if you go to the law offline, it's actually illegal, right? But with services, everyone's doing it a little differently. We think we can get you 80% of the way there. We have over 1,000 PSA customers. They're pretty vocal about what they want. A lot of times what we build are things that we take directly from enhancement requests that people have come to us. So we do a pretty good job of staying in front of that. But what we give you is a foundation for a partner like dAbsolute to take and build, a foundation that a customer, if you have the expertise, if you've gone through the trailheads and such on Salesforce and through our learning paths, maybe you want to do, adding a filter is something that you can do as a customer. Building a new lens or building a whole new set of dashboards, that's probably where I'd want to look to someone that's done it before, like a dAbsolute. We actually even have what we call the project reporting data set, where we have all the data on time cards and margins and EQA. We don't even build any pre-built dashboards out of that, but we provide it there for a partner like dAbsolute to then go and be able to build, custom dashboards for people that still are going to work, that are going to survive through the upgrade process or update process, that are going to work very nicely with your PSA processes. And so,
I'm glad you brought that up, Joe. And, there's a model that some customers prefer us to be turnkey and really build those, but there's a model that we commonly use, which is to really teach customers how to fish.
Right.
So, we work with the subject matter experts end to end on the implementations. And our goal is by the end that, the customers got folks that on their team that are really self-supporting and can really take analytics and run with it and reach out to us if they have questions or they
Right.
need help or some guidance, and, really be self-sufficient with that service available.
Hey, it's great. It's great to be self-sufficient, but sometimes you get out there in the rough waters and you need a bigger boat. And the
Yeah.
Absolute can be that boat.
A lot of sharks out there.
A lot of
Very-
sharks.
Very kind. Yeah, no doubt. Agree with all the sentiments here. I think we're really into Q&A at this point. We just handled some of it up front. One question we have off the top, and again, we welcome any coming in, just clarification from a licensing perspective. I think that it's based on understanding that we're talking about, one platform on Salesforce, single pane of glass. From a license perspective, Joe, is there anything that the customer needs to do with Salesforce to unlock advanced analytics?
Yeah. Short answer is no. We sell you as completely self-contained. We provide an OEM version of CRM analytics. The one caveat I will say is our licensing agreement bounds us to only access data inside Certinia applications. So as long as you're building custom objects that are derived from PSA data, as long as you're building fields, as long as you're having like that, completely self-contained. The one piece everyone wants is opportunity data. Now, we have many customers that soft book projects and bring that opportunity data into PSA, but if you don't, you cannot use my licenses to just put an opportunity funnel next to a utilization calculation. In that case, you would have to license CRMA analytics from Salesforce. And we have many customers that do that and blend that. So again, if all you want to look at is Certinia data, completely self-contained. If you want to blend data from outside Certinia, then there would be separate licenses you would get from Salesforce, unless you've brought that data into PSA.
That makes sense. Totally makes sense. On that topic, Rachel, when we're talking to customers where we've got integrations, a big existing ERP, for example, they've got a BI, an external BI system. What's my advantage in making the investment and exposing the data on platform, and talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it ties back to having that, single pane of glass, Matt. I think you covered that in some of your statement earlier. And really, when you're looking at what someone wants to see at an individual level to understand how they're being measured, their login time in PSA, right? When you're looking at what your sales reps are doing with opportunities and with the sales side, they're logged into Salesforce, and having the data on platform and available is going to help. It's going to help with the single source of truth aspect. You're not going to have these competing definitions throughout the business, right? All the data is in one place, and it's built upon and extended upon the definitions that are native to Salesforce itself, right? And then you're also going to have less complex environment, right? You're going to have fewer systems that people need to swivel their chair and access throughout the day to really understand how the business is performing, or even at the transactional level to make sure that they're getting the data in the right place when it needs to be in complete by, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of time cards, expense reports, information that you need to see, be able to look at, how the margins are looking at the individual or the project or the resource, or I should say region, practice, or group level. All of that data you want to have, available in time for when you need it to make quick decisions. And when you have a BI system in place, it's great. You can take data from all throughout your business, but there can be delays and there can be discrepancies between definitions that start to plague your environment there. And that's why I'm a big advocate for having that data on platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, it's all good, Joe. I was gonna ask Jim, like, if that resonates, voice of the customer, right? What was the BI situation at Quest?
Yeah, at Quest, we had a very good data warehouse, actually, transition to Data Vaults that we would use for a lot of overall analytical stuff. But as Rachel said, if it's on, keep people on the platform, sales reps, the services team, keep them on the platform. Don't make them exit out to something else. There are other uses for our data vaults, which I thought were absolutely great, but you want to keep the people on the platform who are on that platform and get their information there. So I think every company approaches it a little bit differently, and you have some questions about the information we get here versus there, but whenever you can, keep them on the platform.
Yeah, we see that. You weren't alone, James. We see that a lot with our enterprise customers. Almost everyone's going to have some kind of data warehouse, data marts, data lakes, what you call data vault. Yeah, data / word that represents storage. I've heard them all. What at least our analytics do in those cases is provide nicely organized data from our side. That data model, the data model alone acts as a cleaner data source than going and grabbing a bunch of transactional tables out of Salesforce and Certinia. So there's value even if you already have a data warehouse or a data mart, just from a data hygiene standpoint.
Fantastic. Well, from my standpoint, I think, with 6 minutes up against the hour, I'd like to hand it back to Erica. We are open to questions. As I mentioned, Dreamforce, both ourselves, Certinia will be there, available. They'll go to Chow, and we're a reach out away and closely collaborate. So whether it's a reach out directly to myself, Joe, anybody on this call, we can align and get you supported and get the right teams in front of you. If this conversation is interesting and you want to dive deeper, we're all in. So Erica, back over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate you moderating today's webinar. And I'd like to just take a minute to thank Rachel and Joe and Jim from being here today as our panelists in this discussion. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, for our attendees, the recording will be made available to you in the next 24 hours by email. We're also going to be sharing the full Quest software success story if you'd like to read more about their success with their implementation. And there will be a link there as well to request a demo if anyone who's watched this webinar is interested in diving deeper with us on what that looks like for their organization. Thank you again and have a wonderful day. And we hope to see you in one of our next upcoming webinars. As we mentioned, it's a 4-part series in the Certinia customer journey on a connected business. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.